Before we dive into this heart-stopping story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our Brave Animals community. We bring you incredible stories of heroism, loyalty, and courage that will leave you breathless. Ready for today's story? Let's get started. It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday morning in a Dallas suburb. The sun was shining. The parking lot of Greenfield Plaza was packed with families running errands, and the smell of fresh coffee from a nearby cafe drifted through the air. Parents laughed as kids chased each other between shopping carts. Teenagers scrolled on their phones, and an old man in a cowboy hat waved at a neighbor. Life felt safe, normal. But sometimes what looks like an ordinary day hides something much darker. And sometimes the only one who sees it is a dog. Hunter, a 3-year-old German shepherd, sat in the patrol car's back seat, his dark eyes scanning the lot. His handler, Jake Thompson, a veteran officer of the Dallas Police Department, sipped his lukewarm coffee while filling out paperwork. It was just another shift, or so he thought. Then, without warning, Hunter's ears shot up. His nose twitched, and a low growl rumbled deep in his chest. Jake glanced back. "What is it, boy?" Hunter's body stiffened like a coiled spring. He let out a sharp, urgent bark, the kind that made Jake's pulse skip a beat. The dog lunged toward the door, pawing at the glass, eyes locked on a black sedan parked at the far edge of the lot. Jake followed the gaze. The car seemed unremarkable, an older model with tinted windows. It looked like 100 others in the lot. But Hunter wouldn't stop. His barks grew louder, more frantic, a desperate warning in the calm of the day. Okay, easy," Jake muttered, setting his coffee aside. He stepped out and unclipped Hunter's lead. The dog surged forward, dragging Jake across the asphalt toward the sedan. As they approached, Jake's heart rate quickened. The car was dusty, its plates barely visible. A corner of blue fabric was caught in the back door, flapping gently in the breeze. "Is someone in there?" Jake whispered to himself. He tapped the window, then knocked harder. No response. Hunter pressed his nose to the trunk, whining, scratching, pawing like he was trying to dig through the metal. Jake's stomach sank. He radioed dispatch. "Unit 342 requesting backup. Possible situation at Greenfield Plaza. Need immediate assistance." His voice was calm, but inside, adrenaline surged. Jake circled the car, peering in through the windows. The glass was fogged up from the inside. That wasn't right. Hunter barked again, his body vibrating with urgency. Jake knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "What is it, buddy?" "What are you telling me?" Then, a faint sound stopped him cold. A soft thump, almost like a muffled cry, barely audible above the hum of the parking lot. Jake froze. His gut twisted. Hunter's instincts were rarely wrong. The first siren wailed in the distance, growing louder as backup units raced toward the scene. Shoppers began to notice the commotion, some pulling out phones to record, others murmuring nervously. Jake's eyes stayed locked on the trunk. His partner's barks grew sharper, higher-pitched, almost frantic. Every second felt like an hour. When Sergeant Miller arrived, she didn't waste time. "Status?" she asked. Jake pointed at the car. Hunter's locked in on the trunk. Windows fogged, blue fabric in the door, no response inside. "I heard a sound. Could be someone in there." Miller nodded sharply, signaling her team to cordon off the area. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his flashlight tighter. "Let's get this open." Hunter's barking turned into a howl, a raw, desperate sound that cut through the noise of the parking lot like a blade. Jake had never heard him sound like that. It was a plea. When the officers pried open the trunk, the smell hit them first. Stale air, fear, and something sour. Inside, curled up under a thin blue blanket, was a small boy, no older than 6. His wrists were bound, his cheeks streaked with tears. A syringe lay beside him. For a moment, no one moved. Time seemed to stop. Then Hunter leaped forward, sniffing the boy's face, whimpering, licking him gently, as if urging him to wake up. Jake's throat tightened. "Get EMS here now," Miller barked. The boy stirred weakly, eyes fluttering open. His lips parted in a faint, broken whisper. "Help." Hunter lay down next to him, nuzzling his tiny hand, his body a shield against the world. Jake blinked hard, swallowing the lump rising in his throat. He reached out, brushing the boy's hair back, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're safe now, kid. We've got you." But deep down, Jake knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Hunter's gaze shifted, his eyes dark and focused as if he could still sense danger lurking in the shadows. And Jake, looking into his partner's loyal eyes, realized one chilling truth. This rescue was just the beginning. The parking lot buzzed with nervous energy as Jake knelt beside the boy, his heart pounding in his chest. The boy's eyes, wide with fear and confusion, darted around before settling on Hunter, who lay protectively at his side, his big brown eyes soft, his body still tense. Jake reached for the boy's hand gently. "Hey, buddy, it's okay. You're safe now. What's your name?" The boy whimpered, barely a whisper. "Tommy." Jake's breath caught. "All right, Tommy. We're going to get you help, okay? Just hang in there." The paramedics arrived, moving with urgency but careful not to startle the boy further. They lifted him onto a stretcher, wrapping him in a thermal blanket. Hunter whined softly, trying to nudge closer, his tail thumping gently against the ground. Jake placed a steadying hand on the dog's head. "Good boy, Hunter. You did great." But Hunter wasn't calming down. His ears stayed perked, his nose twitching wildly as he sniffed the air. It was like he was telling Jake that the danger wasn't over. Jake's radio crackled. "Unit 342, we've got something. A witness saw a man leaving the lot about 30 minutes ago. Blue hoodie, black cap, carrying a duffel bag. He headed south on foot toward Main Street." Jake exchanged a glance with Sergeant Miller, who nodded. "Let's move," she ordered. Hunter was already up, pulling on the leash, his nose to the ground like a bloodhound locked on a scent. Jake followed, weaving between parked cars, past shoppers who stared with wide eyes and whispered behind their hands. The adrenaline surged back into Jake's veins, sharpening his focus. Main Street was busy as usual. Cars humming by, people strolling along the sidewalks, kids running with ice cream cones. But Hunter had zeroed in on a trail, leading them straight toward a narrow alley between a diner and a hardware store. Jake hesitated for a split second before following the dog into the tight space. The air was heavy with the scent of garbage and old grease, but Hunter ignored it, nose pressed to the ground, tail low and stiff. Halfway down the alley, Hunter stopped. He circled a dumpster, barking sharply, his paws scratching at a crumpled black duffel bag tossed carelessly beside it. Jake's pulse spiked. He grabbed his gloves and approached cautiously, Hunter growling low beside him. He knelt, unzipping the bag with tense fingers. Inside were syringes, a half-empty bottle of liquid labeled ketamine, and a bundle of photographs. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He flipped through them, each one showing a child, different. Kids, different places, some at playgrounds, others at bus stops. Names, dates, and times were scrawled in the margins like some sick catalog. Jake's hands clenched into fists. He scanned the alley for any sign of the man they were chasing. Hunter sniffed around, pacing in tight circles, then froze, ears straight up. His nose pointed toward the diner's back door, which was propped open slightly. Jake drew his gun and signaled to Miller, who had just caught up. She nodded, weapon ready. "Dallas PD!" Jake shouted. "Come out with your hands up!" Nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably long, broken only by Hunter's low, steady growl. Miller moved in first, Jake at her back. They swept the kitchen, empty, except for a cook who threw up his hands in alarm. "Hey, I just work here, man." Jake's heart sank. The trail had gone cold, or had it? Hunter barked sharply, bolting toward the exit. Jake chased after him, Miller right behind. They spilled out onto the street just in time to see a figure in a blue hoodie disappearing around the corner, the duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Hunter, track!" Jake shouted, and the dog surged forward like a bullet. They sprinted through the bustling streets, dodging pedestrians, weaving through parked cars. Hunter led them into a nearby park, his barks cutting through the chatter and laughter of families enjoying their day. Jake's legs burned, but he kept pushing. Up ahead, the man glanced back, saw them, and picked up speed. He darted into a wooded area, branches snapping behind him. "Hunter, go!" Jake called, releasing the leash. The German shepherd leapt ahead, disappearing into the trees. Jake's breath heaved in his chest as he followed, the world narrowing down to the sound of his footfalls, Hunter's distant barks, and the crashing of the fugitive ahead. Suddenly the man stumbled. Hunter lunged, catching him by the pant leg and dragging him down with a ferocious bark. Jake closed the distance, gun drawn. "Hands where I can see them," he yelled. The man struggled, trying to crawl away, but Hunter held firm, teeth bared in a warning snarl. Miller arrived seconds later, cuffs out. They had him. As they secured the suspect, Jake noticed something tucked in the man's hoodie pocket, a crumpled piece of paper. He unfolded it, heart hammering, a list of names, addresses, ages, children, Jake's. Blood ran cold. His fingers tightened on the paper as he realized the scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just about Tommy. There were more kids out there, more lives in danger. Hunter sat beside him, panting hard, his tongue lolling, eyes still locked on the man like he was daring him to try something. Jake reached down and ruffled the dog's ears. "You saved him, Hunter," he whispered, "and we're not done yet." As the suspect was loaded into a patrol car, Jake and Miller exchanged a grim look. The man might have been caught, but this story wasn't over. Not even close. Jake glanced at Hunter, who sat tall, nose twitching, in the air, like he was already picking up the scent of the next clue. And deep down, Jake knew. They were only just beginning to uncover the darkness lurking beneath the surface. Hunter wasn't just a dog. He was a partner, a protector, and the key to stopping a nightmare before it could get any worse. The sun was starting to dip low in the Texas sky, casting long shadows across the streets of Dallas. Jake stood by the patrol car, the crumpled list of names in his hand. Hunter sat beside him, ears perked, eyes sharp, his breath still heavy from the chase. Jake stared at the paper, trying to make sense of the names. They were written in messy handwriting, like someone had scribbled them, in a hurry. Emma, age 5. Lucas, age 7. Sophia, age 6. Next to each name was a location, parks, schools, even a library. Jake's gut twisted. This wasn't random. Sergeant Miller approached, her face tight with concern. "The suspect's not talking. He lawyered up the second we cuffed him." Jake shook his head, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "He doesn't have to talk. We've got the list." Miller nodded. "We're running the names through the system, but it's slow. Too many kids, too many possibilities." Hunter let out a low whine, his nose twitching in the air. Jake glanced down at him, a thought sparking. Hunter's got the scent. Maybe we don't need a computer. Miller raised an eyebrow. "You think he can track them?" Jake looked into Hunter's eyes, the dog's tail giving a single low wag. "I don't think. I know." Without waiting for permission, Jake crouched in front of Hunter, holding the paper close. "Find them, boy. Find them." Hunter sniffed the paper carefully, then the air, his head tilting slightly as he processed. The scent. Suddenly his body tensed and he barked once, sharp, clear, like a gunshot in the quiet. Jake grabbed the leash. "Let's go." They moved quickly, Jake jogging behind Hunter as he weaved through the parking lot, past the patrol cars and the small group of onlookers that had gathered. Hunter's nose was glued to the ground, pulling Jake like a magnet. The trail led them 3 blocks away to a small, run-down playground tucked behind an old church. The swings creaked in the breeze and the paint was peeling from the monkey bars. At first glance, the place seemed empty, but Hunter didn't slow down. His ears were back, his tail low, and he let out a soft, growling whimper as he circled a green trash can near the edge of the park. Jake's heart pounded. He approached carefully, drawing his flashlight and shining it inside. At the bottom of the can, barely visible under some fast food wrappers, was a pink hair clip and a child's shoe, tiny, scuffed, with a cartoon character on the side. Jake's stomach dropped. He radioed in. "Unit 342 to dispatch. We've got evidence at the Greenfield Church playground, requesting immediate backup and crime scene team." Hunter barked again, louder this time, and bolted toward the side of the church. Jake ran after him, the leash tugging tight. Hunter stopped near a small utility shed, pawing at the door and barking frantically. Jake didn't hesitate. He kicked, the door open, flashlight beam cutting through the dim space. Inside, it smelled musty and old, but something else lingered, something sour, like unwashed clothes and stale food. In the corner, huddled beneath a thin blanket, was a little girl, no older than 5. Her cheeks tear-streaked and her hair tangled. Her eyes were wide with terror, but when she saw Hunter, she let out a tiny, hopeful sound. "Hey, sweetie," Jake said softly, kneeling down, keeping his hands where she could see them. "My name's Jake. You're safe now. This is Hunter. He's here to help." Hunter approached slowly, his big eyes gentle. He lay down a few feet away, resting his head on his paws, his tail wagging ever so slightly. The girl reached out a shaking hand, touching his fur like it was the first safe thing she'd felt in a long time. Jake swallowed hard. He radioed in again. "Confirmed child found. Request EMS immediately." As sirens approached in the distance, Jake stayed with the girl, murmuring softly, promising she was safe now. Hunter stayed too, his body a protective wall, his eyes never leaving her. When the paramedics arrived, Jake stepped back to let them work, but Hunter remained close, watching every move. Jake knew in his gut that the little girl wasn't the only one. The list in his pocket said so. As they prepped the girl for transport, Miller came over, holding her phone out. "Jake, you need to see this." They found surveillance footage from a gas station down the block. Jake took the phone, watching the grainy video. The suspect they'd chased earlier was there, all right, standing next to a second man, taller, heavier, wearing a baseball, cap pulled low. They were talking, handing something back and forth. Then the second man got into a white van and drove off. Jake's blood turned cold. "There's a second guy," he muttered. Miller's expression darkened. "And he's still out there." Hunter's ears perked up at the tension in Jake's voice, as if ready for the next command. Jake looked down at him, feeling that same quiet certainty. "Come on, boy. We've got more work to do." As they loaded the girl into the ambulance, and the sirens faded into the distance, Jake clenched the list of names tighter in his hand. The clock was ticking, and every minute could mean the difference between life and death for the kids still out there. Hunter's tail thumped once, and Jake knew they were thinking the same thing. They weren't stopping until every single child was safe. The night air in Dallas was thick and heavy, the kind that clung to your skin and whispered that something was wrong. Jake felt it in his bones as he leaned against the squad car, staring at the map spread across the hood. Hunter paced restlessly nearby, his ears twitching, his nose constantly in the air as if the answers were floating just out of reach. Miller tapped her pen against the list of names Jake had recovered. 2 down, 4 to go. Her voice was tight, the weight of the situation pressing on everyone. Jake nodded grimly. "We can't waste time. Every second counts." Hunter let out a low growl, his nose lifting toward the sky. The dog was locked, in hyper-focused. Jake crouched next to him, gently stroking his back. "What is it, boy? You got something?" Hunter barked once, short and sharp, and took off toward the far end of the parking lot. Jake jumped up, heart racing, and followed. Miller and the rest of the team fell in behind, boots pounding against asphalt. Hunter led them down a narrow alley behind an old hardware store, the shadows deepening with each step. The city sounds faded into the distance, replaced by the quiet hum of distant traffic and the faint buzz of a flickering streetlight. They reached a chain-link fence that bordered a small wooded lot. Hunter circled, sniffing frantically at the ground near the fence line. Jake shined his flashlight and spotted a section of the fence where the wires had been cut. Recently. "Looks like someone's been through here," Miller muttered. Jake nodded. "Let's move." They slipped through the gap, Hunter leading the charge. The woods were dense, the branches low and clawing at their clothes as they pushed forward. Jake's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, scanning for any sign of movement. Hunter stopped suddenly, head low, body rigid. His growl was a low rumble deep in his chest. Jake's heart hammered. He aimed his flashlight in the direction Hunter was staring, and froze. There, barely visible in the beam's glow, was a small, makeshift camp. A fire pit still smoldered, a few blankets scattered on the ground, and near the edge of the clearing, a white van sat half hidden beneath the trees. Jake's breath caught. "That's our van." Miller radioed for backup, her voice steady but urgent. Jake moved in slowly, hand on his holster. Hunter crept beside him, every muscle in the dog's body coiled like a spring. As they approached the van, the hair on the back of Jake's neck stood up. The back doors of the van were slightly ajar. Jake exchanged a glance with Miller, who gave a nod. "Let's do this." Jake counted to 3 silently in his head, then yanked the doors open. His flashlight swept the inside, and there, huddled in the corner, were 2 children, a boy and a girl, their eyes wide with terror. Hey, it's okay," Jake said, quickly, lowering his voice, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "We're here to help." Hunter moved in, his tail wagging slowly, his body low and non-threatening. The girl let out a shaky sob, reaching out to touch Hunter's head as if she couldn't believe he was real. Jake's throat tightened. "You're safe now. We've got you." The sound of sirens grew louder. Backup units closing in. Miller directed the other officers to sweep the area while Jake helped the kids out of the van, wrapping them in blankets from the squad car. Hunter stayed close, pressing against the kids like a warm, steady presence. But even as relief flooded Jake's system, he knew it wasn't over. The man they were chasing, the one from the gas station footage, was still out there. As the kids were loaded into ambulances, Jake circled back to the van, shining his flashlight inside. Something caught his eye. A crumpled map stuffed into the glove compartment. He pulled it out, unfolding it carefully. There were markings, red circles on different locations across the city. One of them was labeled Warehouse, 3 a.m. Jake's stomach twisted. He called out to Miller, holding up the map. "This is a schedule. They've got more kids. They're moving them." Miller's face hardened. "Then we're moving too." Jake looked down at Hunter, who sat staring at the map as if he could read it. The dog let out a low, determined bark. "Let's go, boy," Jake murmured. They piled back into the patrol car, lights flashing, sirens wailing as they sped toward the address marked on the map. Jake's hands gripped the wheel tight, knuckles white. The thought of more kids out there waiting in the dark fueled every mile they drove. Hunter leaned forward, his nose twitching at the open window, eyes alert, body tense. He could sense it. Jake could feel it in his own bones. As they neared the warehouse, the city lights gave way to the shadows of an industrial park. The place looked deserted, quiet, too quiet. Jake slowed the car, scanning the lot. Miller pulled up beside him, her eyes narrowed. "Ready?" Jake nodded, taking a deep breath. Hunter's ears perked. He let out a sharp bark, his body going rigid. Jake's pulse spiked. "Hunter's got something," he said, voice low. "Let's move in." They approached the warehouse cautiously, flashlights sweeping across the darkened windows and steel doors. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, every nerve on edge. Hunter darted ahead, nose low, and stopped at a side door. He pawed at it, barking sharply. Jake didn't wait. He kicked the door open, flashlight cutting through the gloom. Inside was a large, empty space, at first glance. But then Jake spotted a small office tucked in the corner, light leaking from beneath the door. Hunter growled, low and fierce. Jake raised his gun, signaled Miller, and they moved in together. When they burst into the office, they found a man seated at a desk, flipping through a stack of papers, his back to them. A security camera feed blinked on a monitor in front of him, showing different locations, parks, playgrounds, bus stops. The man froze, his shoulders stiffening. "Hands in the air!" Jake barked. The man turned slowly, a sneer twisting his face. He looked at Jake, then at Hunter, who was snarling, teeth bared, ready to lunge. Jake's finger hovered on the trigger. His voice was steady, cold. "Where are the other kids?" The man didn't answer, just smirked, his eyes flashing with something dark. Hunter lunged forward, barking furiously, forcing the man to stumble back in his chair. Jake stepped in, cuffing him while Miller read him his rights. The man's silence was chilling, but Jake wasn't waiting for words. He grabbed the stack of papers and began scanning them. Addresses, times, names, more kids. Jake's hands shook as he realized the scope of what they were dealing with. Hunter sat by the door, staring out into the night like a sentinel. His body, still but his eyes burning with purpose. Jake knew they weren't done. Not even close. But with Hunter by his side, they had a fighting chance. The warehouse air was heavy with dust and stale coffee, the kind of place that smelled like old secrets and bad intentions. Jake stood over the papers they had seized from the man at the desk, flipping through page after page, his pulse hammering in his ears. Addresses, times, notes scrawled in the margins, names, more kids. He felt sick. Miller leaned over his shoulder, her brow furrowed. This is a network, Jake, a whole operation. Hunter sat by the door, his breathing steady, but his body tense like a spring wound too tight. His eyes never left the man in cuffs who sat silently in the corner, head down, a slight smirk tugging at the edge of his mouth like he knew something they didn't. Jake clenched his fists. We need to find those kids. Now. Miller nodded, already on her radio, coordinating with units across the city. But Jake's gut told him they couldn't rely on standard procedure this time. Too slow. Too risky. Hunter gave a low bark, then sniffed at the pile of papers. Jake watched him, a thought forming. Wait. Jake knelt beside Hunter, holding a sheet close to the dog's nose. Can you find them, buddy? Hunter sniffed the paper deeply, his ears flicking forward. Then, like a switch flipping, he snapped, to attention, turning sharply toward the warehouse exit. Jake didn't wait for a plan. He trusted Hunter's instincts like he trusted his own. Let's go, boy, Miller called after him. Jake, where are you going? Jake barely glanced back. Where Hunter leads. They burst out into the night, the city lights flickering, in the distance. The squad car's sirens howled in the background, but all Jake could hear was the steady rhythm of Hunter's paws hitting the pavement. The German shepherd's nose was low, weaving side to side, pulling hard on the leash. Jake followed without question, his adrenaline a live wire buzzing in his veins. They crossed an empty lot behind the warehouse, past a row of old delivery trucks. The trail led them into a narrow alley where the air smelled like rot and gasoline. Hunter stopped at a battered blue van parked awkwardly against a dumpster, his body rigid, tail straight. Jake's heart clenched. He approached the van carefully, peering inside through the dirty window. At first, he saw nothing but clutter, fast food wrappers, crumpled clothes, an old blanket. Then his eyes caught something that sent a chill down his spine. A small stuffed animal wedged between the seats, worn and dirty, with a name written on the tag. Lucas. Jake's breath caught. He tried the handle. Locked. Hunter barked, his paws scratching at the door. Jake didn't hesitate. He swung his baton hard against the window, the glass shattering in a spray of shards. He reached in, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. The van smelled like fear, sweat, stale food, and something else Jake didn't want to identify. He climbed inside, searching frantically, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. In the back, hidden beneath a pile of blankets, he found him. A boy, maybe 7 years old, curled up in a ball, his face streaked with tears. His small hands were tied with zip ties, and his lips trembled as he whimpered softly. Jake's chest ached. Hey, you're okay now. I've got you. He gently cut the ties, lifting the boy into his arms. The kid was light. Too light. Jake could feel the ribs beneath his sweatshirt. Hunter pressed close, licking the boy's face gently, his tail wagging slowly, a soft whimper vibrating in his throat. The boy flinched at first, then relaxed, his small hand gripping Hunter's fur like a lifeline. Jake whispered, "You're safe now, Lucas. We're going to get you home." Miller's voice crackled over the radio. "Jake, status?" "Got him. Lucas is safe." The weight in her voice lifted instantly. "Good work, where are you?" "Behind the warehouse, blue van." "Got it, units are en route." Jake cradled the boy as the sirens grew louder. He glanced down at Hunter, who sat by his side, eyes on the boy, ears alert. The bond between them felt unbreakable, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. After the paramedics arrived and whisked Lucas away, Jake and Miller regrouped. The man they'd arrested still wasn't talking, but the papers they found painted a disturbing picture. The operation wasn't just local, it spanned multiple cities, possibly even states. Miller ran a hand through her hair, her eyes dark with exhaustion. "This is bigger than we thought," Jake nodded, his jaw tight. He glanced at Hunter, who lay at his feet, his body still but his nose twitching, his ears flicking every few seconds as if waiting for the next sign. Then, as if on cue, Hunter's head snapped up. He stood, his body tense, staring off toward the end of the alley. Jake felt it too, an itch between the shoulder blades, a shift in the air. Hunter barked once, sharp and insistent, then took off at a sprint, pulling the leash from Jake's hand. "Hunter," Jake shouted, taking off after him. Miller followed, the two of them racing through the alley, their boots slapping against the pavement. Hunter led them to an old service door at the back of a storage unit complex. He sniffed at the base of the door, then pawed at it furiously. Jake tested the handle. Locked. "Step back, boy." He kicked the door hard once, twice. The third time, the frame gave way with a loud crack, the door swinging inward. The smell hit them immediately. Unwashed bodies, stale food, fear. Inside, the dim light flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Stacks of boxes were piled haphazardly, but it was the far corner that caught Jake's eye. A tarp. Movement underneath. Jake's heart pounded as he approached, pulling the tarp back. Two kids. A boy and a girl, huddled together, eyes wide, with terror. The girl's lip quivered and the boy clung to her like a lifeline. Jake crouched down, voice low, steady. "It's okay. You're safe now. We're here to help." Hunter lay down beside them, his tail thumping softly, his head tilted just so, his eyes warm and gentle. The girl reached out, burying her fingers in his fur. A tear slid down Jake's cheek. Miller was already on the radio, calling for more units, for medics. Jake stayed with the kids, waiting as the sirens approached. Hunter sat tall, watching the door, his eyes alert. Jake followed his gaze, his heart heavy but hopeful. This wasn't over, not yet. But for now, for these kids, they had made it. The sun was barely breaking over the horizon when Jake and Hunter arrived back at the station. The dawn light cast long shadows across the parking lot, and Jake felt every ounce of exhaustion in his bones. Hunter, sitting tall beside him, looked tired but alert, as if he knew they still had one more job to do. Inside, the station buzzed with controlled chaos. Officers moved between desks, radios crackled with updates, and Miller stood at the whiteboard, markers in hand, connecting dots on a web of names, addresses, and times. She looked up as Jake entered. "We got a tip," she said without preamble. "Warehouse district. An old building near the train tracks. Could be the last spot." Jake's heart thumped hard in his chest. He glanced down at Hunter, who seemed to pick up on the urgency instantly, standing up, ears pricked, ready. "Let's move," Jake said, already heading for the door. They reached the warehouse in under 15 minutes, the squad cars fanning out quietly to surround the block. The place was a mess. Graffiti on the walls, broken windows, rusted metal siding. A cold wind whipped through the open spaces, rattling loose pieces of debris. It looked abandoned, but Jake had learned better than to trust appearances. Hunter sniffed the air, then took off, leading them toward a side door. His nose pressed low to the ground, tail stiff, body tense. Jake followed, heart hammering. Miller was at his side, weapon ready. "We go in quiet." Jake nodded. He pushed the door open carefully. Inside, the space was dark, lit only by slivers of light from the boarded-up windows. The air smelled of mildew, oil, and something else. Something that made Jake's stomach turn. Hunter moved ahead, his paws light on the dusty floor, stopping at a stack of old crates. He sniffed hard, then scratched at the ground. Jake knelt down, shining his flashlight, and there it was. A small footprint in the dust. Fresh. Hunter barked once, sharply, and bolted toward a set of stairs leading down. Jake and Miller followed, adrenaline spiking. The basement was even darker, the walls lined with shelves holding who knew what. In the far corner, a single light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a dim glow over a makeshift room. A mattress on the floor, blankets, a water jug, and there, sitting cross-legged, was a man, scruffy, mid-40s, with tired eyes and a look of defiance that made Jake's skin crawl. Behind him, in a small cage barely big enough for a dog, was a little boy. He couldn't have been older than 5. His face was pale, streaked with tears, his small hands gripping the bars. Jake felt a surge of rage, but he kept his voice calm, steady. "Step away from the boy." The man smirked, raising his hands in mock surrender. "What's the charge, officer?" Before Jake could answer, Hunter growled, deep, low, and menacing. The dog's fur bristled, his body tense as a coiled spring. Jake moved fast, crossing the room in a few steps, yanking the man to the ground and cuffing him while Miller covered. The man struggled, but Hunter's growl stayed steady, a reminder of what would happen if he tried anything else. Jake turned to the cage, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the latch. It creaked open, and the boy crawled out, sobbing. Hey," Jake said softly, scooping him up. "You're okay now. We've got you." Hunter pressed close, licking the boy's face gently, his tail wagging in slow, careful strokes. The boy clung to him like a lifeline, his tiny hands tangled in Hunter's fur. Jake felt tears sting his eyes. Miller radioed for medics as the backup team secured the scene. The man in cuffs muttered something under his breath, but Jake ignored him. All he cared about was the kid in his arms and the dog by his side. Outside, the boy was wrapped in a blanket and loaded into an ambulance. Jake knelt beside Hunter, stroking the dog's ears, his voice rough with emotion. "You did it, buddy. You found him." Hunter let out a soft, almost contented huff, leaning into Jake's hand. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting golden light over the warehouse, Jake looked out at the scene, officers working, medics tending to the boy, Miller coordinating teams. The case was breaking wide open, but for Jake, it wasn't just about an operation. It was about every kid they'd found, every parent who would get a call that their child was safe, every life that might have been lost if not for Hunter. Later, that day back at the station, Jake sat quietly beside Hunter, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. The weight of it all settled heavy on his shoulders, but there was also a sense of deep, bone-deep gratitude. He looked at Hunter, who sat at his feet, eyes half closed but still alert, always ready. "You saved them," Jake whispered. "All of them." Hunter didn't answer, of course, but he didn't have to. His eyes said it all. Jake knew this wasn't the end of their work. There would always be more out there, more kids who needed saving, more darkness to shine a light into. But for now, they could breathe, knowing they had made a difference. And as he sat there, watching the sun fade beyond the rooftops, Jake thought about something deeper, how sometimes it's not the loudest voices or the highest ranks that save lives. Sometimes it's the quiet instinct of a dog, the persistence of a team, and the courage to act when no one else does. So here's the question for you. When the moment comes to make a difference, will you be the one to step forward? Will you trust your gut, your heart, and maybe even the instinct of a loyal dog who sees what you can't? Because sometimes the smallest signals lead to the biggest rescues. And sometimes heroes walk on 4 legs.